In 1990, Dr. William Marcus, a toxicologist, held a press conference in Washington and said, "Fluoride's a poison that causes cancer. The government knows this and yet it's covering it up." So, who is this Dr. Marcus? Well, he works for the Environmental Protection Agency, which is the government department obliged by law to watch out for poisons in drinking water. He is a toxicologist, a scientist who's an expert on poisons. He works in the Office of Drinking Water. Dr. William Marcus is the Chief Toxicologist of the Office of Drinking Water of the Environmental Protection Agency. He is the chief government scientist whose job it is to know about poisons in tap water. And in 1990, he says as publicly as he can that fluoride in tap water is a poison. He is, of course, sacked for trying to do his job and protect the public. How dare he try to defend innocent women and children? However, he defends himself by suing the government under the Whistleblower Protection Act. He proves his case in a court of law and is eventually reinstated with both back pay and damages. Both a federal judge and a government inquiry find that he was sacked for stating his scientific opinion about fluoride and not at all for the phony, trumped-up reasons given by the government when they sacked him. He says that the government committed 70 crimes of perjury and forgery to try and shut him up. And goes on to say that other government scientists have also been coerced into shutting up.
In 1994, Dr. Phyllis Mullenix, a toxicologist who had trained at Harvard Medical School and who was head of an entire toxicology department in Boston, published a peer-reviewed paper stating that fluoride in drinking water caused brain damage. She was sacked for doing so, but proved in a court of law that she'd been wrongfully dismissed.
Why is this relevant to the people of Britain? Well, because in 2003, the UK government passed a law that said that everybody in Britain was going to get fluoride in their water. But it's okay, said the UK government, because we asked some scientists to check it out. The scientists that they asked were at York University, and in 2000 they produced their report called the York Review about their examination of the practice of adding fluoride to drinking water. Does the York Review mention Dr. William Marcus, toxicologist? No. Dr. Phyllis Mullenix, toxicologist? No. Are any of the scientists involved in it toxicologists? No. So, does the York Review mention that fluoride is toxic? Well, surprisingly, yes, but only in a very wishy-washy, roundabout way. So, just what could be going wrong with all this science? The best clues come from Christopher Bryson, a BBC journalist who spent 10 years investigating fluoride and produced a meticulously researched book called The Fluoride Deception in 2004. This book has had a Nobel Prize winner for medicine say of it, "It is my sincere hope that this book will receive the attention it deserves and that its implications will be seriously considered." Bryson dug through government files that had been top secret since World War II and uncovered an amazing but well-documented story. It turns out that fluoride was vitally necessary to make the atomic bomb. The project to make an atomic bomb, called the Manhattan Project, used fluoride to make uranium hexafluoride. However, fluorides are both poisonous and volatile, and so, sure enough, there was an industrial accident
that sent a cloud of various fluorides over a town called Deepwater, New Jersey.
Because it was poisonous, it poisoned trees, cattle, horses, and people. In a court of law, the local farmers sued for compensation, but the military-industrial complex decided that it couldn't allow the court to reach a verdict that fluoride was a poison, because that legal judgment might interrupt the production of atomic bombs. A successful lawsuit might result in a judge slapping an injunction on a factory, demanding that it stop its pollution, which in turn might force the factory to stop its production of bomb materials. Public knowledge of the dangers of fluoride might have labour unions refusing to work with such toxic material. These injunctions and strikes would delay and might even stop completely the production of atomic bombs. So the military decide that the knowledge that fluoride is a poison is a threat to national security, a threat that they decide to eliminate. It turns out to be easier to force a lie down the public's throat and to get scientists to lie about basic scientific facts than it is to reduce pollution. The story of fluoride is the story of industrial pollution, military industrial pollution.
In order to properly understand the real reasons why governments deliberately add fluoride to drinking water, we're going to have to know something about 3 different kinds of fluoride. Fluorite, associated with steel smelting. Cryolite, associated with aluminium refining. And fluorapatite, associated with fertilizer refining.
Fluorite is an ancient name for calcium fluoride, which is a mineral rock found in the Earth's crust.
Fluorite has been used since the Middle Ages as a flux, something that makes molten metals flow more like water and less like sticky sludge.
In fact, the mineral fluorite takes its name from the Latin word fluo, which means to flow like water, and from which we get the English word flow. You could say fluorite helps metals to flow right. The chemical element fluorine was first discovered in fluorite. On its own, fluorine is a pale yellow gas, but because it's the most reactive element known to man, it is always found in combination with other elements, such as calcium. Any combination of elements that includes fluorine can be called a fluoride. So fluorite is a fluoride because it contains fluorine. This fluorite rock is found all over the world, where the geological process known as erosion grinds the rock down into a fine powder that becomes suspended in the groundwater.
These particles of powder are so small that they cannot be seen, tasted, or smelt. However, they do not actually dissolve in the water.
There are very large areas of the world where the water contains this finely powdered rock. And even here in Britain, there are several areas where the water contains this invisible calcium fluoride. In England, we are told that this contaminant is not dangerous, but that's not what they say in India or China. A BBC correspondent in India writes, "This is a story of a land where excess fluoride has turned the groundwater into a slow poison, crippling at least 10,000 people and leaving hundreds of thousands of others in constant misery." He goes on to write of people with paralyzing bone diseases, stooped backs,
crooked hands and legs, deformed teeth, blindness, and other handicaps. The land that he's talking about is only one small district within one of the states of India called Andhra Pradesh, and yet he numbers 300,000 people as being affected and 10,000 people as being totally crippled. What he is talking about is called fluorosis, poisoning caused by fluoride. Here's what two surgeons, Dr. Reddy and Dr. Deem, have to say about fluorosis in Andhra Pradesh. Fluorosis, they say, is a disease caused by excessive ingestion of fluoride through water and or food. There are many kinds of fluoride poisoning: dental, genu-valgum, skeletal, and neurological. Here is basically what they say about skeletal fluorosis. The earliest clinical sign of skeletal fluorosis is restriction of the movement of the spine. Eventually, the whole spine becomes stiff. The surgeons illustrate why the spine has become stiff with a picture that shows a spine where fluoride has caused the bones to join together into a single rigid bone, and in which the ligaments of the spine have also turned into bone. They go on to say that the stiffness spreads to the arms and legs, and that bony outgrowths may appear over the limb bones, especially around the knee and elbow, which they illustrate with another picture. Skeletal fluorosis, they say, usually becomes crippling between the ages of 30 and 50. Nerve damage, say the surgeons, is caused when bony outgrowths press upon the nerves and cause them to malfunction. The effect of trapped nerves on touch and sense of joint position tend to be, they say, bizarre and widespread, even causing deafness. They go on to say, what is striking is that because of the coexistence of crippling deformities of the hips, knee, and other joints, it becomes difficult to decide whether the disabilities are caused by neurological lesions or by skeletal deformities. Yet another bone deformity that the surgeons associate with fluoride is called genu-valgum. Dental fluorosis is a mottled discoloration of the teeth. But if you consider teeth to be a special kind of bone, then you can consider dental fluorosis to be yet another bone disease. But fluoride doesn't just harm bones, says Professor A.K. Susheela. Dr. Susheela is a full professor of anatomy in New Delhi. She is also a fellow of the Indian Academy of Sciences and the National Academy of Medical Sciences. Professor Susheela has spent more than 20 years researching the harmful effects of fluoride on Indian people. Put simply, Professor Susheela says that calcium fluoride enters the body through the mouth and reacts with the acids in the stomach to create hydrofluoric acid, which corrodes the stomach lining. This damage to the stomach lining then causes gastrointestinal problems, such as constipation and irritable bowel syndrome. But it also reduces the ability of the body to extract nutrition from food. A sad loss in a land of famine, but especially tragic in the case of pregnant women who, after all, are trying to eat for two. Malnourished mothers produce underweight babies with many subsequent medical problems.